Canada.
You finally got it.
Yes, I finally got it.
Canada. Okay.
Yeah.
That's the first time you've ever heard it, right?
Actually, it's the first time I've ever heard it.
And I don't believe it because every Canadian
Yeah.
says it's so I think there's like this inside joke that every Canadian is like, if you hear them say this, pretend it's like the first time you've heard it. Because everyone
Okay.
is like, oh, I've never heard that, Okay. So okay, so good afternoon, Marwa. Today we have the good fortune of having a special guest, Phil Trubey, who we've dialogued with many, many times on X. So Phil is kind of a legend out there, very insightful about AI in general, and robotics has been in this space. Has got a storied history in, I guess you say, information technologies. You can see his hair is about as gray as mine, so we probably don't have the same number of years of experience. And yeah, Phil comes from San Diego, which I spent a wonderful summer out there 45 years ago. So that kind of dates me a little bit. And today, we're going to talk about the humanoid that has made the biggest news this week. And do you know who that is?
Well, that would be Sunday that announced on Wednesday.
Yes, exactly. So Sunday came out of stealth on Wednesday, and it's made a lot of waves, and there's a lot of very interesting things in there. And I'm really looking forward to Phil's insights on what he sort of noticed because he always has a slightly different take on things, and I learn a lot from that. So, Phil, are you ready to tell us what you think of Sundays?
Yeah. So just before I talk about Sunday, I just want to level set a little bit for the audience because what I've noticed is that people on social media and other places are talking about the humanoid robot industry. And it's not really a humanoid robot industry. I mean, we've had humanoids for a long time. Asimo, for instance, 25 years ago. The Boston Dynamics hydraulic Atlas was a humanoid. But what we're having now, what we're discussing now really is the AI robot industry. And that is something that only popped into existence 4 years ago. And really it was Tesla that brought it to everybody's attention with their Optimus unveiling 4 years ago. And and it happened to be a humanoid. Okay. So that I think that's why people conflate humanoids and AI robots, but really we're in an AI robot industry. And we're finding out today or these days that it makes a difference because we are seeing AI robots that aren't really humanoids. Um, we're seeing, Sundays, a little bit of a hybrid. We're seeing other ones that are just like two arms on a stationary table, but they're an AI robot and they can do things that AI robots can do that uh, traditional industrial robots cannot. So I just want to kind of level set on that. So yeah, Sunday was fascinating because it showed us some things that we haven't seen before, right? So we always see these demo reels whenever anybody announces themselves. We see demo reels, and the Sunday demo reel was interesting in that they had very long horizon tasks,
Yes.
uh, and it was nice in the manipulation. It has a weird. And you can talk more about the actual hardware and the three finger actuator and stuff like that and the form factor, but the big thing was a long horizon task. Now, I'll give Sunday a little bit of grief because the videos they showed were all sped up by a lot. Some of them were 4x sped up, some of them were 10x sped up. Um, and I actually have a video here where I took the 10x video and put it down to 1/10 speed so we can actually see what it looks like in real time. But nonetheless, ignoring that nit, it was an impressive demo. Now, we can talk a bit about the target that they're going after. I don't know if you want to talk about the hardware first, and then we can talk about their target
Yeah.
market.
Yeah. I think the first thing was again sort of my impression that if anyone wasn't following it is last week, Sunday started to come out of stealth by announcing a couple of posts building up the hype of the announcement. Everyone's expecting it was going to actually happen on Sunday until they realized, oh, November 19th is actually a Wednesday. So we got little snippets that was coming out. And then Wednesday was like any other day for me. It starts out with I don't know what's going, and then a lot of news comes in, other things that happen. and then I wasn't able to actually catch the initial announcement. And then a bunch of people forwarded it to me, and it was, I think, a first like 2-minute video, which was more of an advertisement. And everyone looked at it and they just said, "Oh, overhyped." And I looked at it quickly and I go like, "Oh yeah." I mean, it's not much more than it was already kind of teased, so I wasn't quite sure. But then later that night when I had a chance, I got to see the first 4-minute video that came out. And then suddenly I went from, wow, they really didn't overhype this. This is really good. And the first thing is that you point out, it was that there was like the long horizon, which we know is very difficult for everyone. There were certain aspects of things that we're doing in there, like, getting the tab out for being able to put it in the dishwasher. It, kept on doing it until I got it. And I have a hard time. It usually takes me 3 or 4 times as well. And then that we could see they could do, I was never sure about the hand itself, what the capabilities of the hand was, but they managed to do a few things that I do have some question marks about, like starting the dishwasher is one of the hardest things of modern dishwashers. I don't know if you've noticed, is that the button is very hard to find. You don't really get good confirmation back. It just beeps at you. It doesn't really tell you, it's like 2 beeps good or 1 beep. I'm not sure which. And can you see the light? All those things are difficult. And then it's just hard to find. So with that thumb or whatever they were using, I was amazed they could hit it. But I think what really did it for me was when they showed the sock folding. And then it's like, wow. I mean, it's with those hands, you really can do that, and that's when I was kinda sold that they really had done something quite impressive.
Yeah, the sock folding. So, and now we get into the AI.
Mhm,
So here, let me show you the sock folding at real time. If you look at the at one speed, 1x true speed of the sock folding demo, you see a situation fairly early on when it's trying to pick up the sock, and it's pawing. So it paws at the sock, and it doesn't quite grab it. It has to paw like 3 times before it can actually grab the sock. And we've seen that before. We've seen that behavior before with the, figure logistics
mm,
demo,
mhm,
where sometimes it's trying to pick up a package and it paws at it. It doesn't it knows that it hasn't picked it up, but it's not human-like. This is not human intelligence, right? This is I think this is an artifact of imitation learning.
yes,
It it's it it's mimicking, or it's remembered in a general way, a sequence of actions, but it doesn't really know what it's doing. A human, when it misses a sock, just looks harder and, moves those fingers and picks up that sock. You don't paw at it for 3 or 4 times. A human just will not do that. The human knows what it is actually supposed to be doing at that point in time.
right, right, right. So
It
so the question comes down to, a matter of being able to, um, recognize that, and whether it just keeps on persistently doing, because you when I if I remember when Figure did it, it would paw at it a couple of times, and then it said, "Okay, something's wrong." And it's almost like it then did a reset, and then it tried again. And somehow when it did the
exactly.
reset, then it would be able to work. So first it has to recognize that there's something wrong. And you're right, the correction is over a very long period of time. It's just, oh, just keep trying. Just keep on, basically beating your head against the wall again and again, rather than thinking back and reflecting what the problem is.
Yeah. So, the AI describe so that's an interesting kind of limitation.
Mhm.
Um, Now, having said that, they obviously have, some kind of reasoning overlay on top of what they're doing. It's not just imitation learning, which is what we've seen. And that's why the Sunday demo was so interesting, because most of the other stuff we've seen is imitation learning, like that figure logistics demo, which I really liked
Yeah.
and thought was state of the art, was really imitation learning. The memo and Sunday has layered on top something else, and they're doing it all on the bot as well, um, which is probably why it's so slow, right? Which is probably why they have to do 10x and 4x speed ups, because it's not because that bot processor, that NVIDIA Jetson processor, is probably running full tilt.
Yeah.
Would be my guess.
Mhm.
Now the good news is that, you know next year's Jetson or 2 years jettisoned, will be a much faster chip, and that problem will just be solved in time.
The
Uh,
question is, will it be a lower power chip? Yeah, faster doesn't necessarily mean lower power, or you think it will be about the same?
yeah, I mean, they keep doing new process nodes, right? So
Yeah.
so that gives them lower power, better performance at the same time, and
Okay,
it's
okay, hopefully that's good, which doesn't seem to be too much of an issue for them. They've got, they say 4-hour battery life out of it. They can have a pretty big battery there because it's down there in the base.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
that won't matter. And again, when you were saying it was being done on the bot, you mean like all the inference is being done on it, just so that the audience is sort of aware it's not using anything externally, but it's trying to run as much everything as locally as possible.
Yeah, yeah, the interesting thing is that, I mean, these are all just demos, and they don't really show us end-to-end stuff. So how does, Memo, the robot, how does Memo know that it's supposed to do something? I
Mhm.
I mean, I'm guessing that in reality, they have a laptop there, and they
Yeah.
type in some commands, and that kicks off a routine in Memo. But obviously, for a true home robot, you need to have a natural language understanding, and interactions back with a human. It needs to talk to you back and forth. Now, we know large language models can do this, and we know that large language models can reason, and we have visual language models, visual language action models that roboticists use, but they're big models, and it's I don't think they can fit right now
Mhm.
on the robot.
Sure.
So the demos that we've seen where people actually talk and interact with the robot, that uses Wi-Fi. It's going back and we saw it actually with Optimus when we had that guy.
Uh, Mark
Uh,
Benioff when he was there,
Thank
yes.
you, Mark
Yeah.
Benioff. Yeah, when Mark Benioff was there and he interacted with Optimus, that was a Wi-Fi connected, and it was talking to Grok in the cloud. Um, so there's some limitations, if you will, that the industry still needs to work through. The other thing is that people will look at that Sunday and Memo demo and go, "Wow, it'll be ready next year," kind of thing. But the home environment, oh my god, they are picking like, they're doing a moonshot, right? The home environment is the worst environment to be trying to launch a robot into. And you said this before too.
Mhm.
If you actually wanna make money in robots these days, you would do low-hanging fruit kind of stuff. You would do simple logistics, simple manufacturing, you would get your robots out there, you would get revenue. The companies that are trying to do home automation are gonna be they're gonna be hemorrhaging money for a long time trying to get the holy grail of robotics working in a very
Right,
challenging environment.
right, right, and I think, like, to add on to so what I said about it before is that everyone wants to know when is the bot gonna be in the home? And usually when they're asking that question, they wanna know what year I think it's gonna be, and my answer is more flippant than that, it's like when they're safe. So you can have the cost, you can have the capability, but if it's not safe, it can't go in the home, and that's the first thing. They seem to, let's say, have mitigated the safety issues a little bit. Whether it's 100% mitigation at this point, it's not clear. Their go-to-market strategy right now is it's probably won't be the earliest till 2027. They have a beta program that you can sign up for where they're going to screen users or beta testers and select 50 of them. And then by the end of next year, so that's basically a year from now, they will start that deployment. And then, so that kind of leaves open, well, how soon before you really start seeing it in the home? And realistically, I think that means it couldn't be until 2028 at the earliest, assuming there's going to be a couple more generations. So if we look at from what they did from the design, so they did everything in 18 months, which is always a challenge to do that. They made the decision that we're not going to be just a software play like Pi or Dyna, that we're going to build our own hardware because my understanding is that they believe the two are intertwined. You really can't do one without the other. So they designed the hardware specifically for the software and kind of vice versa to do that. So they had to do that quick. And I was like, how do you get it in the home and make it safe? A lot of criticisms about the bot because it's a wheeled base. Pros and cons to that. Absolutely pros and cons. And by going that route, they are kind of moving more into, well, it's going to be safer than a bipedal. But by doing that, we're going to lose a lot of capabilities, some which aren't obvious right away until you study it. The most obvious one, everyone's going to point out, but it can't do stairs. And then, of course, I point out as well, neither can your Roomba and stuff like that. And stairs are not important right now. What's important is the floor. If the bot cannot operate on the floor and do anything useful on the floor, it doesn't need to go upstairs. Okay. It's when you solve that, then you can start talking about it going upstairs. The other thing is that the assumption is that everyone lives someplace where stairs and things like that are part of their home environment. That's not everyone's home. There's a large swath of people that live pretty much in flats, may have some carpeting, a few issues that might make it a little bit difficult, but there is probably a market segment that they can attack early on and not worry about the stairs problem. So again, sometimes people get focused on that last 10% and forget about the first 90%, which is why we don't make any progress.
True, true. And Sunday has, I don't wanna, say that Sunday's, not gonna be a good company or anything. They have some interesting innovations. One of their innovations is their skill capture glove.
Mhm.
Um, so they realize that teleoperation isn't very good. You don't get very good quality data from it. So they, decide to make this glove. It's really kind of like a hard structure, but it makes your hand mimic the memo hand,
Mhm.
and it's got a camera on it, and I believe they call them memory researchers or something like that. The people,
Memory developers. Maybe. I was trying to
memory
remember, like
developers. That's
memory
right.
detective, but I think wasn't like the memory detective in one of those movies with Tom Cruise. I can't remember, but they're MDs.
Yes,
Yes, so
yes, they're
they're
MDs.
memory developers. Yes,
And they had recruited 500. I think they're up to 2,000 now
yeah,
because it's so simple that they just get somebody to put on this glove or this thing and then do ordinary household things. Now, they capture more than just the video on the hand. They also, I believe they also have a
I
GoPro as
believe so
well.
too. Yes, yep.
Yeah. And that GoPro is important because that gives them a whole body, awareness and whole body control. So that's another piece of their technology is that they use the visual from the GoPro and translate it into how the bot could
Yes,
mimic that movement.
yes,
And that's a nice, elegant way of doing
it is.
things, right?
It
Um,
yep.
yeah. So you got the skill capture glove, you got the memory um,
Developers.
developers, you've got the skill transform between the gross body movement and the GoPro. Um, And so those are all cool innovations. And then I don't know what you think of the hardware, but I thought the hardware of that body going up and down, I thought that was interesting,
Yeah.
performant, and
Like I say, a lot of pros and cons. Once it gets into the market, really quickly, the base was well designed. The designer of that also designed the Matic, so he has an idea of about how to build something like that. It's about the right size, so it can get access to a lot of places without being too wide. There are probably some situations where it won't quite function. Some advantages of being able going up, but what's interesting is that I think it's more like they're going on an interesting architecture here, because one concern is like, wow, they're going to be they built their own hardware, so they're locked into that kind of hardware configuration. And I'm not quite so sure that remember the data capture is with the skill glove, and that's kind of what they're focusing on. And it's a human kinematic, and they just have the camera up there. So they're getting really close to like egocentric data. The problem that we've had right now with teleoperation and everything else is everything from being very laggy to the human isn't really seeing things exactly the same way the robot is, or unless they get the helmet on, then that's kind of difficult. So, but now you're talking about, I'm seeing it the way it is, but the biggest problem has always been the haptic. The human has no idea what the robot is feeling. And the robot has no idea, the other way is not getting really good sensory input. This way, they actually solve two problems is that the operator knows what it feels like, and the robot, because you're embodying those hands, is doing the same thing. And then they manage with that to put it into whatever the robot embodiment is. So if they change that to be full humanoid, I don't think there'll be a problem. They've also been really good is that it seems to be pretty good full body control because the mobile base just doesn't position itself and hold and then let the arms do everything. The arms are being coordinated with everything. They're being coordinated with the telescoping lift, with the movement around there. When it closes, the dishwasher door, all those elements are getting in there. Now, partly there's a little bit of a need because they need sort of a torso, and they're trying to minimize the number of joints that you have there through redundancy. So if the torso needs to rotate, because I do really need to get my elbow to move into something like that, usually I can just do that with my torso. It can't, so it has to rotate the whole base. It's like, well, that's fine. It's like if you can get minimization that way, that's pretty good. And then they do have a little bit of a lean, but sometimes you'll want a little bit more lean. The only problem, of course, with that lever going up is that you can't lean in too much till you bump things, unlike us that we can get over more. But they added just the right number of degrees of freedom. So it's an MVP, meaning minimum viable product. I think yeah, you could say they could add more degrees of freedom, but it's like, but they don't have to. The thing is they found the bare minimum that you can get away with.
Yeah. Yeah, and I like their espresso, demo as well, where if you notice to get that torque, to
Mhm.
um, muscle strength, if you will, to move that over, they actually the base, the torso moves up.
Yes.
So they use the up motion of the big motor of that, it's a much bigger motor than anything else, and he uses that as part of the way to get that torque,
Yes, and that's one of the
which is
advantages of the base is they're not, worried that much about mass down at the base. And, did you look at the specs? You know how much the bot weighs?
I do not
What
remember.
what's your guess? How much do you think it weighs? I don't worry, I know. I'm just like,
Oh,
you
okay.
overall impression, what would you think? Does it weigh more than Optimus, less than Optimus?
I would think it would you would think it would weigh less. You would think it would weigh, like, 60 pounds or something like that,
Yeah,
50
yeah,
pounds.
yeah, but it's more like it's, 170 pounds, so it's in the same weight categories
Wow.
as all the others. A lot of it is because it's got a 4-hour battery, it's probably a lot of motors down there, and evidently that lift, also can be pretty massive. I think according to Merdad, he said that could be almost 20 kilograms itself by the time you get the
Yep.
actuators and everything in there. Now, normally, um, that's a deal breaker for a household humanoid bot because it's just too heavy.
Right.
And, people can even argue that at 66 pounds, Neo is too heavy. It's like, oh, seriously? But, the concern about that. And that's because if you are a dynamically stable bot, mass is extremely important for a variety of reasons. One, not just power consumption, but really safety. So until you get it down, no one's going to want that in there. This bot, it's not such a problem. And it's almost an advantage for it to be heavy if the heavy elements are down low, because that's going to make it even more stable. The disadvantage is everyone's thinking, oh, then I can just carry the bot upstairs, to get to the second floor. 170 pounds, no way you're going to do that. But it's very stable because of that. And I think it makes most people are not afraid of it as a result. So you probably had your own impressions. Did you show it to your wife or any of your friends or anyone else? And what was their immediate impression?
I have not yet. Yeah.
Okay, so um, I've shown like videos of figure and one acts to my wife, and it said like, oh, I signed up for getting Neo, whether I get it or not. And she wasn't excited. She's like, I don't want that thing in the house. She's kind of afraid of it, of both of them. And I explained, oh, it could help with the laundry. She says, there's nothing it could do. And every time I say, well, oh, I'm fine doing that. I don't mind doing that myself. She saw this video and she loved it right away. She says, oh, I want that. And suddenly the things that she said she was fine doing, she says, oh, it can do that for me now. If you do the dishes, load the dishwasher. And I was like, what happened? And I think what happened was the fact that the robot was able to communicate. It's very safe and very friendly, and you should not be afraid of it at all.
Yeah, it was interesting. I got to see an a agility, bot, um, recently. Gosh, I'm gonna forget the name of it now. But, the weird looking bot with the
Digit. Yeah,
reverse,
digit. Yep.
Digit, thank you, Digit, with the reverse looking, knees. And it was interesting because I was actually talking to the CEO, and she was saying the early versions of Digit didn't have a head. And of course, this is a factory bot. I mean, they use these in factories, so it's not as if it's in a home environment or anything. But nonetheless, even used in a factory, factory workers didn't like it because it didn't have a head. It looked
Mhm.
too scary. So so all they did is they put on this stupid little plastic head, literally with googly eyes, made all the difference in the world.
And no
And
neck.
a
It's like
and
this.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, but just having the head with the googly eyes, and I tried it. I was there and I actually took the head off and looked at it and said, "Wow, that is kind of scary." Put the head back on, and I was like, "Yeah, actually, that looks a lot better."
Yeah,
So
their original head was kinda scary because I think they had, like, a LiDAR or something up there, so it looked like a
yes,
truncated cone,
yes,
and when it was
yes.
on there, it gave me this, the day the world stood still vibes, you know, was it Gork or something like that, and yeah, I looked, it's like, "No, I wouldn't wanna be anywhere near." So it's in interesting that like, small little change like that could be enough for the acceptance. Now, what Sunday did with the eyes is they have these cartoon character kinda eyes. There's actually no camera in there. They intentionally no camera because it turns out if you put a camera for the eyes in there, people don't like it for some reason. It just looks too creepy. But by doing that, it also makes it much more approachable. And then the camera is underneath the brim of the hat. So it's actually kind of suspended there and you can see where it is. So it's not worrisome. So overall, the vibe of it is great because no one's afraid.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's interesting, but, I'll just, finish on how hard a home environment is. Yeah, and they even allude to it, right? Because they say, "Oh, yeah, when we do our capture, data, capture, we find cats in dishwashers," and the home environment is chaotic, right? And simple things like, you're doing something and the spoon that you want to use isn't where it's supposed to be. So now the bot has to change. You have to know enough to be able to do a spoon searching algorithm, or whatever. It's nothing is set up the way it should be in these demos. I'd like to see one of these home bots, by the way, wash its hands.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
because you see Memo, it's picking up dirty dishes and putting in the dishwasher, and all that's all very nice and fine, but those actuators are gonna get dirty. I mean, you have to
Yeah.
wash the hands.
Yeah, 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 and but it was interesting to see that he did kinda clean the plate a little bit. Um, that was interesting. What I haven't seen yet is that everyone is loading the dishwasher, showing that, but no one's showing unloading the dishwasher, and you would think if it's chaotically loaded, sometimes it makes it even harder, so it might be easier to put it in than take it out, and a lot of times we all know that when we try to empty it, there will be, like you say, that spoon that somehow when it got in there a certain way, suddenly stuck, and you're trying to pull it out, and you have no idea what's going on, and you realize you really have to finesse it to get it out, and those gonna be those chaotic situations you're going to see, I don't know, 1 in a couple 100 times or something like that, but still it's gonna be enough to cause these repeated failures where imitation learning is not gonna be enough. There's gonna have to be some reasoning or it's like, "Why can't I pull this thing out of the dishwasher right now? What's going on?" Is they never stay where they're supposed to. And the other thing is, um, Airbnbs, they tend to have plates which are perfectly designed to go into the dishwasher, and they're always the same style. But most homes I've been in, we all have, like, different sets of plates that we've inherited that just don't fit properly in there. They don't nest very well. They're, like, too tall. So when you start looking at real kind of table settings, they are complicated to figure out. And again, like, where do you put the bowls? Do the bowls fit right? Do you ne how do you nest them? How do you make sure they're not getting in the way? So that and also, like we just talked about, the simple thing of turning on the dishwasher, which we all know is very difficult. Not every dishwasher has that button in the same place or has the same startup sequence. So how do you learn that? Are they gonna have to use something, do you train them on so it recognizes the right one, or does it know something about the appliances that you have, and then it's able to do a Google search and say, "By the way, how do you turn this thing on?" and inform me. But even then, how good are the bots gonna be at learning a step-by-step guide like that? Versus,
Yeah,
I've never been
yeah.
shown how to turn on this particular dishwasher. Now you're gonna tell me to push a button that rather than being on the right side, that's on the left side, and actually requires, like, a sequence of 2 or 3 things that have to be done before it goes.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing already, I mean, Sunday in their technical blog, for instance, navigating around the home, right? So somehow the bot needs to go from the dining room to the kitchen. And they say that they actually need to load. a map of the
Yeah.
home
Yeah.
into Sunday. So, I mean, that's something as basic as being able to recognize what's the dining room, where the dirty dishes are, where the kitchen is, where the dishwasher is. It can't do that right now. Now, is that an insurmountable problem? No, but that's where we're at, right?
Yeah.
We're still at very simple
But
stuff.
but
It
then
needs
again,
a map. It needs a map uploaded.
yeah, neither can the Roomba, at least the last time I did it, is that you have to map your home in a way, and then you tell it.
Yeah.
You have to label all the rooms, and ideally, that's what's gonna have to be is you as a human do a walk through the house with it and say, "This is the kitchen. This is the family room over here. This is the child's bedroom over here." Really explain what it can probably do some exploration, say, "Oh, this looks like a bedroom. Whose is it? This looks like a kitchen. Whose is it?" Should be able to do that, um, by learning how to explore, which is why I like the idea of them going into Airbnbs because then they get that variety and where does that map but, my understanding is that, yeah, I think there has to be a map. We have a mental map in our head on how our house is arranged, so when you do that, we know exactly, how to get there. So I'm not surprised. The question is how detailed that map is. Is it, a LiDAR scan map, or is it really something that's more semantic that the kitchen is right next to the family room or something like that between the living room?
Yeah. Nonetheless, people's expectations are gonna be that the
Yeah,
robot just suddenly starts
yeah.
working, and it's not gonna be like that. And that's one of the reasons why I think it's interesting, 1X's approach, with Neo, where it's going to be, a lot of tele-op, remote
Mhm.
tele-op. And the reason they're doing it is to get over all those limitations that we just mentioned. Um, it it and that's an interesting thing about the robotics AI, the AI robotics industry right now, is that we are seeing an explosion of of niches and ways of attacking things. So, like, Sunday and 1X are attacking the home in different ways, right? Sunday wants to do it all via AI, and they are on a very difficult road. 1X is saying, "Yeah, we're gonna do it via AI, but we're gonna, use teleop in the meantime." And then we have tons of other stuff going on. We just had by the way, this week was just nuts, right? It used to be that you'd have, like, a major robot
Mhm.
AI announcement every month. Then it came to every week, you'd have a major AI robot announcement. This week, it's been every friggin' day and sometimes 2 a day,
No, some of it's been
and
every hour. It's
every
like
hour.
Wednesday was like
In
every hour.
compare
Like, didn't they get the memo? Don't release and I mean, I meant that joke. Don't release on Wednesday. There's gonna be a big but then like 2 or 3 others kind of came out on Wednesday as well. It's like, wow, they got
Yeah.
lost in the news.
Right, Agile was one that came out on Wednesday, and it
Yep.
got kinda lost in the news.
Tangible.
Flex On, Tangible, Flex On, Mind On, Physical Intelligence just announced a $600 million
There
raise today. I
there's another company that it looked almost like an R2D2 kind of bot. I can't remember who they were. They also were, like, kinda caught up in that whole thing. So, yeah, I'm lost.
no, it's ridiculous. I was trying to prepare for this thing, and I was on X, and I was going, "Wait a minute, there's, like, 5 things I need to like, just came
Yeah,
out that I need to read, like,
and I forgot
now."
about Agile. I'm glad you reminded me of that because yeah, all the questions were coming in. "What do you think of this bot?" And it's like, I'm too busy with this other one right now."
So lost in all this is poor Tesla, right?
Yeah.
Optimus, the granddaddy of all these AI robots, the one that everybody was saying, "Oh yeah, it's going to take over the industry," and all that kind of stuff. We've heard nothing. And then what does Elon do? He releases an insipid AI video of Optimus and all these things. It's like, oh my God, Elon, read the room.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly, exactly. You wanna show that see the real stuff, not to see and I do like the fact that the Sunday guys, their social media was really good, and one of the reposts was, "AI was used in the making of this video," which was absolutely hilarious because it's a real video. It kind of turned the tables around there. I
I love it.
yeah. So, yeah, they literally leaned in, quite well. Um, but yeah, these are all really interesting points on the different approaches. So if we think about there's one thing I don't quite understand with Sunday that maybe you'll help explain is that it's pretty clear 1X is gonna come in the house and they're gonna hope they can do quite a bit. And I imagine there's gonna be a certain amount of setup And I'm hoping it's one of these things that like, Neil, follow me around the house and it will know to do that. And I'll say, this is the kitchen, this is the breakfast nook, this is the dining room. And then he'll know that. Um, and then start to do certain things because I'll ask him, go get me a cold water, and he'll go over to the fridge and be able to pull something like that out. But at some point he'll get stuck. I'll have to have someone come in with teleop and do it. And now the assumption is, oh, now that he's been teleoped, he's going to do that now. It's like, not really. It just means they get the data set that's going to go up there. And just like with FSD, you have to wait until the next update when that happens. What's not clear to me is with Sunday is whether you're going to be getting those gloves because I don't think they have any teleoperation at all. And so if it doesn't do something, what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to like put on those gloves, go over and do it? Because now it's going to be the same thing. It's not like it can do it. It's going to have to be uploaded to the mothership. The mothership is then going to have to go do a lot of training on that. And then eventually it comes down. And I don't know what that turnaround is, whether it's like, oh, within a couple of days or hours, or it's like, oh, you have to wait for the next update, like we always do with FSD.
Yeah. So it's a different approach, right? So um, Sunday is very particular in that they said that next year's home use is going to be a beta program.
Yes.
This is not going to be to general public. This is going to be essentially hiring, and maybe they might even pay them. I don't know.
But,
Uh,
I filled out the form, so anyone can go in. I shouldn't be saying this
okay.
because now I just lost my place in line. So you go through and you say something about your household setup. How many floors there are, whether you have pets and children, and a bunch of other things. And they're going to screen that, and from that, they're going to pick 50 lucky
Right.
people, and it looks like it's going to be free, actually, free beta testing, and then we don't know anything more about that. Is
Yeah, I would assume they give everybody a data capture glove.
Yes.
And you're right. And by the way, that's one of my big bugaboos in general with AI robotics is that we are missing a huge capability in AI in general, and that is continuous learning. AI learning is all offline. It's all
Mhm.
data capture, huge amount of data capture, goes up to a giant supercomputer, crunches it, and then you get a new model, and that model is then downloaded. And we've seen it in our Tesla cars, and that's what happens.
Right.
And and it it's very limiting, in my opinion. I mean, an example I have the other day, I was trying to put a screw into a weird fixture and get us started and all that kind of stuff. Uh, it took me like 3 different uh, attempts, like 3 different techniques to be able to do it because it was so hard to do, right?
Mhm.
I and and the 4th way ended up being the first way I did it. It's just that I had learned by fiddling with that stupid screw in the fixture, I had learned in that 1-minute time of fiddling, I'd learned how to properly feel and get that screw in there properly to twist it properly. So I mean, that is real time learning
Mhm.
in that I learned how to do something in real time there. None of these bots can do that. And the delay between um, uh, capture of data and then eventual learning, and the fact that you can't learn while you're doing. I think
Yeah.
for AI robots, I mean, it wasn't a big deal with large language models and text and all this kind of stuff. It's not a big deal. But for robots, I think it's a big deal. And that's going to um, it's going to be an impediment to how far these AI robots can go, in
Yes.
my opinion.
Yeah, I agree, and that kinda comes down to the degree of customization that you can do, and how much of that is just playing with a couple parameters. Like we can do in our Teslas is that we can decide whether it's gonna be chill mode or standard or something like that, but that's not really changing the way we drive a particular route or how we have to go through our neighborhood because we know it so well. And so it may see
Right.
that we do these certain disengagements and then learn a little bit from that and say, "Oh, there's a pothole here. People like to avoid the pothole." It doesn't mean that it's aware that there's a pothole right at the end of my road that I'm avoiding it every day. It's just that maybe it's going to look out for it or not. But there's a big difference between trying to avoid potholes and knowing exactly where they are because of your familiarity. Now, maybe they'll be able to do uh, it seems to me they could save certain things, like certain routes that you do, certain preferences that you have of doing that. It seems like the navigation system should at least be smart enough to say, "Oh, I've seen this before. I know that you always prefer changing it this way. I will do it that way." You prefer taking a certain series of streets or cutting through some parking lots or something like that because or time of day kind of things. But that's very different than the bot really acquiring what's a sort of a new skill, and that we have to wait a long time for that to happen.
Yeah, well, I was gonna say, by the way, the reason why Tesla doesn't do that on full self-driving, why it doesn't learn where the pothole is,
Uh-huh.
even though you've gone
Uh-huh.
over it 5 times, it's because it I'm quite sure it is a directive from on high, because that's a workaround.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah, yeah,
cheat.
it is, it is, it is.
It's a workaround, and yeah, I think, um, others have said this, that they decided unconsciously not to do that so that
Yeah,
they
you don't want to because
tried.
the pothole will get filled in. Potholes show up here and there all the time. In Michigan, we just know we have potholes. We don't necessarily know where they're going to be at
Well,
any one
but
moment.
more importantly, you want that AI to be able to
Yeah,
visually recognize that
exactly,
there is a hole there.
exactly,
So
exactly. Not
if you
based on.
always have it,
Mhm.
if you always have exceptions, which you can, I mean, you can
Yeah,
always have exceptions, but then the model won't get trained to recognize, potholes, like, on a general basis.
yeah.
Eh
I
eh
suppose yes, you do want it to be able to recognize it on a general basis, but it still would be kind of nice when you do it to be able to tell your car that, oh, by the way, there's like a new pothole right over here. Just look out for it. I mean, that's what we would do with
I
any driver. Like an Uber driver is
I
coming in,
agree.
we will warn them, say, "Hey, guess what? We got a really bad um, construction going on here. I just want you to be aware of that ahead of time." And that's I think you should be able to do that without necessarily compromising the model, saying the model's bad or that it requires that. It's just, it's a little bit more aware.
I agree. There's a swale at the bottom of my dead end street that drive through, and the model is just not recognizing there's a
Mhm,
swale there. So
mhm.
so I hit it hard every time. It goes 5 miles an hour faster than it should on that turn going into the swale. Um, but I think probably wouldn't be surprised if it was an Elon directive saying, "Don't do that because it gives you an out. It gives the developers an out." Now, at some point in time, though, I agree with you 100%. At some point in time, it would be nice if they relaxed that, and allowed us to tell the model, "Hey, here's an exception for this area."
And it's not
Maybe
doesn't
it'll
have to be so
come.
much an exception, it's more like, just watch out. Ju there tends to be someone here, just be on the lookout for it, and as opposed to
Yeah.
actually pinpointing it like Waze does. Waze is giving you update real-time information about there's a situation right here, which is kinda like that cheat that you're talking about, is that it's not that it's recognizing on its own, it's being told ahead of time. Whereas I just would like to say, these are the things that you have to be aware of on this drive, just keep an eye on.
Yeah. Yeah, we're probably gonna have to wait for AI 5, if not AI
Yeah,
6 for
yeah,
that, because
yeah.
now you're asking the model to understand English, first of all, and then reason about it, and then integrate that into the computer's,
Mhm,
model. So it's gonna take a while for us to
mhm.
get to that point.
And
Yeah.
then that's, how does that come over to humanoids? It will be the same thing, is that we have to have the natural language interface to be able to explain what's going on, to tell it the intent. The other part is feedback. What are your thoughts on that? Because that's something I kind of wish full self-driving would have a little bit more, that it would tell me its intent of what it's about to do, because then I would trust it more. So if I know when it's really gonna go, what it's sort of seeing, so I'm not guessing, does it see that cyclist that's coming? Is it going to move in front of it? I never know. And so sometimes I disengage because without that conviction that it's gonna do it right, I would rather be safe than sorry. And I think it'd be the same thing in the home is, do we want to turn our bots into a chatty Cathy that is just like all the time. Oh, now I'm doing this, and now I'm doing that, and now I'm whisking the eggs, and after when I'm done in this, I'm gonna go with, it's like, do we want it in that mode so we really understand what it's doing? Um, or can it? Is it difficult for them to, are they even aware of what they're doing, that they can articulate that to us? And I mean articulate talking, but not by sign
Yeah.
language.
Yeah. So Ashok Elaswamy had an interesting talk just about a month ago, less than a month ago, and he described uh, what the current capabilities of full self-driving are. And in there, they can interrogate they can interrogate the model. Why did you do something like this? And it actually says in English language with labels, because it presumably because of version 12 and previous versions of FSD, it actually labels everything. So it knows what a sign is, it knows what a road is, it knows what a uh, turn indicator is, all that kind of stuff. So it actually will um, tell you. Now, I don't know, I doubt this is on the inference computer at inference computer speeds. This is back in the lab,
Uh-huh.
they're running the model, and it has more time to think. It's not doing it in real time, all this kind of stuff. But nonetheless, the model can explain exactly why it's doing what it's doing. Um, a- and and we're starting to see some of that reasoning being deployed, I believe, in the robotaxi, because we're seeing some pretty sophisticated behaviors, right?
Yes.
Uh, and the examples Elaswamy gave was coming up against the chicken crossing the road, or the geese at the side of the road. Why did that chicken cross the road? But it's determining, it's reasoning about what's going to happen in the future, and it's making decisions based on that. And it comes up against detours and has to reason what to do with the
Mhm.
detour sign, all that kind of stuff. So I mean, talk about Elon and not getting any Optimus updates for a long time. I know that they have very sophisticated AI because we're seeing it in Robotaxi. We're seeing very sophisticated behaviors. It is real time with that very underpowered inference computer that they have now. The AI 4 chip is underpowered compared to current, capabilities. It keeps track of like dozens of agents in the world, through its cameras, and it's making future predictions about what every one of those is doing at any one point in time, which is a very sophisticated behavior. Um, so y- yeah, I would love to see what Optimus AI is up to these days because they have the technology. We just haven't seen it.
Yeah. Now that kind of brings it back to another question of, we have the display that's sort of showing us, what the cameras are allegedly, labeling what's out there. And we always get the impression that that's what it sees. And I have a feeling that that's a layer way above. That's a visualization more or less for us, and we're
Yes.
assuming that that's all it sees, or it does see that. So it'll show there's a couple of traffic lights and a stoplight, and we'll show something that looks like a pedestrian, but that's all pre-processing. And again, it comes on the assumption, oh, it must see those 3 cars that are coming from the left because it's showing me that. And maybe it does, and maybe it doesn't. We don't know. That's why it would almost be nice to have the interrogation way down there to have it says, by the way, I do see 3 cars to the left. And I am waiting for them to pass. And when they pass, then I will start to do this turn. But based on the nature of this particular corner, I'm gonna have to creep out first to verify it's safe before I go. And, oh, by the way, I do see those pedestrians that are on the sidewalk that I'm now blocking, just so you're aware. That's the kind of feedback I would like to have, but right now we are kind of guessing that that's what it's doing.
Yeah, no, I understand. They're edging towards it, right? Because we have Grok integration now, but that's Grok up in the cloud. But nonetheless, we can talk to it. It responds to us and all that kind of stuff. It's not plugged into the car yet for safety reasons, right? They have to validate that and all that kind of stuff. But again, it might be AI 5 before we can talk to the car Grok,
Mhm.
and say, why are you hesitating? Why are you waiting? And then they would come back and say, well, there's this guy behind you that you probably didn't see that's, about to do
Yes.
something.
Mhm.
So, um, uh, b- but the capability is there. I don't think the hardware speed's there, right? I think that's coming in the future. Um, what else? There's something else you said that triggered. I forget what it was, but
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah, that's okay. Uh, the when it comes to the chips and having Grok in there, do you think they would have to have a separate inference chip for Grok, or would it be able to run on the same one? Because I'm assuming you'd like to not take up that bandwidth, for having the large language model running. You'd like to be totally dedicated to full self-driving, and that maybe you would have a separate chip for, being able to speech and doesn't have to be AI5? Could it be a downgraded version of the chip?
Well, I mean, it has to have the state of the a full self-driving chip, right? Because it has to know what the full
Mhm.
self-driving chip knows.
Right.
So you kinda need to do it on the same model, right? So the model has to know and what it knows, that visualization that we see, that's a post-processing visualization. What's actually in its brain is, uh, quite freaky.
Yeah.
It's its own, hyper-dimensional thing that gets, dumbed down for us humans to see on that screen. And everything from the vision that it sees, right? It sees everything photon counts. It doesn't see everything in the same kind of spectral color and everything that we see. It has its own universe that it sees through its own eyes. And that's why you see those freaky uh, deer crossing in front where you can barely see it, after it's happened. Whereas the FSD sees it well in advance, and
Mhm.
it's because, that 3, bit difference, that 3-bit difference of a deer shape kind of thing, you know, 3 bits of, dark versus almost dark, kind of a shape like a deer. A human wouldn't be able to tell that's a deer, but the computer goes, "Wait a minute, there should not be a deer-shaped thing that's 3 that's probably a deer," because, anyway. So, um, yeah, lots of capabilities there. One other thing I'd like to say about AI robotics is that we're seeing um different business models, lots of different business models happening. The obvious one is Unitree in China, and a lot of in fact, almost all of the Chinese bots. They're focused a lot on hardware. And Unitree, to their credit, I mean, they they make no bones about it. They don't provide AI for their bot. They just provide an API, standard programming API for their
Mhm.
bot. But it's good enough and it's cheap enough, an important factor. It's cheap enough that it's become the de facto standard for researchers worldwide. So university researchers, instead of buying, the $60,000 ARM bots that they used to do, they now buy a $60,000 Unitree, which can do a lot more, um, and they're off to the races. And so what that's meant is that you now have companies like MindOn and uh, other ones, I forget the other name, but who
Was it
are just soft
Flexion?
it could be Flexon, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, that could
Flexon,
be
yep.
Flexon, that are just AI companies. So they will just do the AI for Unitree and any other bot that they can come up with. And then you go beyond that. So those are the still trying to do very performant bots because the Unitree is still humanoid, can potentially do a lot of different things. But then you have companies like, the one I like is Ultra Robotics, and all they've done is they've just taken a, cheap, relatively cheap Chinese, 2-arm thing and are using it, in actual production logistics, actually production factory work where they actually do kitting and, bagging and stuff like that. Um, but so there's nothing fancy, nothing, very sexy about all that kind of stuff, but it's real work, it's real robotics, uh, and they're just gonna ride the cost curve of, what the hardware industry will give them. And as they improve
Yeah,
their
yeah. So
AI.
so that yeah, that's Ultra. They're based, I think, in Brooklyn, New York, and, um, you're right that it's a dual arm with a camera that's kinda like where you think your head would be, just like some standard off-the-shelf grippers that are needed for the particular task. It's going
They they
into
they they started using humanoid hands, by the way, and then they
okay.
realized, why the
Why?
heck are we
It's too co
why?
yeah, yeah, part of it is you need the you want the robustness, and so you downgrade it to the point that you have just enough dexterity, and it's also durable because you wanna go again and again, and it's being used in more or less these logistics settings where they have a hard time hiring people and retaining people. Mobility is not that important because a person is, like, just pretty much standing at a desk the whole day, just taking something off conveyor, doing something else, popping in here, just, opening up these bags, and again, that's what I like to call artificial narrow intelligence that, we don't need the G to get the useful. If it's like really, really good at that very narrow thing and is able to handle like all these edge cases and get the OEEs that are comparable to humans, then that's all that matters. That now it's useful. And especially if it's rugged and durable enough. And we know the cobotic arms, like what they're buying, are already used in industry. And we know, they'll run like 80,000 hours or something like that. So more than enough lifetime. The end of arm tooling that they're using is, again, standard stuff, already robust. That's exactly where it is. And it kind of comes back full circle that you talked about where robotics is. And 40 years ago, this month, I started on a mission to try to figure out how to make robots easier to program. And we had to do it without artificial intelligence. We had to create virtual worlds to be able to do that. And even with that, it's very, very, very difficult, which is why you don't see these big deployments. So this idea that you now have, AI that's going in there, that excites me because it allows you to start deploying in very difficult situations. I mean, there are situations that are fairly straightforward on what the robot has to do repetitively, but it's still tedious to teach the robot to do it. And there are others that are just virtually impossible to do right now without an AI coming in because it's not exactly the same process each time. If it was exactly the same process each time, it would be easy to automate. But because there's that variability and humans are the only ones that can kind of figure out how to deal with things that are flexible and these edge cases and things not fitting in and like when reasoning is needed to solve the problem, that's why they're there and we can't do it. And when we want to put the robots in there, we have to structure the situations in such a way that it's always the same because it can only do things that are very repetitive. So that is like the big change that I agree with what you said at the beginning is, artificial intelligent robotics is really what it is. It's not about humanoids.
Right. So that's kind of like a market niche as well. Ultra is basically a RAS company, robot
Yep.
as a service, right? And um, their core IP really is service, support, initial training, setup, integration with any of the company's
Mhm.
ERP system or whatever the heck they have. So it's an integration company, and they are gonna be riding, they're gonna do great because they're gonna be riding the, all the advancements that are gonna
Yes.
be happening in robotics, and they're gonna make it real for manufacturing and logistics companies.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah,
so
and that I think is the right approach because the traditional approach is, um, I'm running a factory, I have some process that I'd like to automate, I go out to a bunch of integrators, I get some quotes back, they provide me a system, we go through a proof of concept, and then we verify that everything's all right, we do the runoff, it's all fine, they hand us the keys and they go away, and it runs great for 6 months, and then we start having problems or a product changeover, and we don't know how to do it, or we had one guy trained up and he's really good, but now he's got all these skills, he's able to get a higher paying job across the street from somewhere else. And then suddenly the robot system is shut down and no one's using it anymore because no one can figure it out. So a lot of these companies would prefer to not have that headache because right now the way they solve the problem is they hire people, they pay them an hourly wage to go ahead and do it. And if you just say, all right, you can do the same thing, except we're going to bring in the robot. And, if it doesn't work, you just kick us out and go back the old-fashioned way, which means we're motivated to make sure we do that because we wanna continue to do that, and most companies are gonna say, "Yeah, sure." I mean, and if I'm able to save a little bit or the quality goes up and you take away the headache and we constantly having to find people to do this work because they always leave after 2 or 3 months, a lot of companies are gonna love that. But for those integrators to work, for that model to work, they have to be able to go in and very quickly get the robots up and going. If it's 6 to 9 months, which is like what a lot of integrations would be like, sometimes even longer than that, that's not profitable. Again, this is why I say we only sell 500,000 robots a year because we sell them one at a time. And each one of them goes through this long engineering process, the integration hell. So the AI can help get rid of that integration hell.
yeah, Ultra says that they can set something up within a couple of days
Yeah.
at a new site, and from a small manufacturer point of view, it's like, okay, I have to hire, some guy all in cost of $80,000 a year, or I can pay you guys 80,000 and not have any worry about
Yeah. Yeah.
HR.
And
It's like no HR
and when you
problems.
bring that person in, that person is not productive for a couple of days anyways. It takes a while for
Right.
to do the training, and wherever they are, that's, like, effectively offline while you're doing an on-the-job training of them. It's really rare they can come in and just do it like that. So if they're able to get the job do the job within, 2 days, it's, like, also worth the time and cost because it's no worse than what we have right now.
Yeah, and that's another thing I hear a lot about. Yeah, everybody, the perennial question on all these things is how much is this going to cost? How much is this going to cost? How much are these robots going to cost? And the answer is pretty much just a little bit less than what a human costs. I mean, that's the answer, right? So what we hear from the manufacturers is they tell us what their BOM cost is, what their bill of materials cost is, and Tesla Elon's keeps saying, oh, we're going to try to get Optimus down to 20,000 in volume. I heard actually a Chinese manufacturer say the same thing. I mean, his BOM cost was the same thing, about 20,000 in volume. So okay, great. We're gonna be able to buy a bot for what, $30,000? No, it's going to be priced at market.
Yes,
What people are willing to pay
supply and
for it.
demand.
It's yes. So it's gonna be a long time before these robots are considered cheap because there's tons of demand.
Until you get that supply, there are definitely companies that are willing to pay 100 to $150,000 a year for that bot. Easily, if it can perform just like the human worker, that they're hiring right now. There's no doubt about it. And those companies, it's financial malpractice to sell them way below what the market wants. So, that's what it's me. The only thing that's gonna bring the cost down is, like, really when that supply comes in there. And there's so many of them that you have no choice but to drop your prices because everyone else is. But
Yeah, you'll have competition coming in.
we're a
Yeah.
long way from that. And again, it's not gonna be that some company in China just starts producing tons of bots. Like, the bot has to be capable, and there's gonna be certain applications where if only Optimus is able to do it, then that's the only place I can go. I can't go to someone else because either the bot doesn't have the AI to do that complex task, it doesn't quite have the dexterity, or it doesn't have the robustness. Something like that is gonna come in there. So if it can't tick all those boxes, it's like, I don't care if it's one-third the cost. In the end, it's gonna work.
It's an interesting bet that Tesla and Figure, for that matter, and a few others, they're betting that fully performant hands are
Mm,
important. A and Tesla has delayed their version 3 Optimus because of the hand. Um, it so there's 2 things about that. One is we know that not fully performant hands can be good enough, first of all, in general, in it you know second thing, though, is that the AI is still lagging. So even if you had a really good hardware bot, the AI isn't really there anymore. So you might as well be working on performant hands because you got
mhm,
time.
mhm.
So you got that. Um, but the other thing that's happening is that we really don't know when the performant hands and the AI are going to come together. People are saying, "Oh, well, it could be, 2 years, 3 years." What if it's 10 years? It could easily be 10 years. I mean, that's within the realm of possibility, which brings its own problems to bear in that 10 years of R&D effort is a very expensive thing to do, and only a few companies are gonna be able to do that. Tesla can do it because they have other, revenue sources. They can spend 50 years doing it. Um, Figure has got a $1 billion war chest, so they could probably ride out a while. Start getting down to people that are capitalized at, like, $50 million, eesh, it's starting to get
Good stuff.
tense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is why you have to focus on the application and low-hanging fruit.
Yes.
You only
You have to
need the general
match.
purpose hands if you need to do a lot of things. And so maybe when you go into the home, you might say, "Oh, we have to." So, going back to Sunday is that, for certain tasks, that hand they have is fine, but you might say, "But the home is full of so many different tasks, we'll find so many cases where it can't work." But when you flip the switch and go into a factory like what, Digit is doing, it's just there for logistics and moving the totes around. It doesn't need a hand. Just the pallet. Walker is the same thing from UBTech is for the most part, the logistics of the application, and they do not need a full hand. And then they have a couple of ones where they have like an 11 off hand, which is sufficient for just going into a parts bin and pulling a couple of these larger items out. It's not trying to go for small screws or something like that. It's like just enough to do it. So I really think that is the way everyone should be going, is like just go after the 80%, because there's so many use cases that you'll stay busy and you'll be able to get the funds coming in, that you can have your R&D guys figuring out how can we make a better, more performant hand. How do we go from 11 DOF to 22 DOF if that's what we really need?
All right. Well, I think we've hit a lot of topics.
We sure have. Yeah. Uh, and
Are
it's
there any questions from the peanut gallery?
let's see. Yeah, Mara, did we get any? Because I know you posted
Yeah,
something out there that
yeah,
we'd be chatting.
yeah. I think
Any
that's
questions?
question, but I think the question I want to ask maybe fell about the continuous learning. You said that none of this humanoid robot they have this continuous learning. So why do you think that's the continuous learning that you mentioned that's missing on the current ones? So where do you think the limit is to get to continuous learning in this humanoid?
It, it's uh, it's an unsolved problem. It's a completely different AI architecture. I mean, start from, burn everything we know down to the ground and start over again. It is a super hard problem. So there are architectures that research, like we're talking deep researchers, like maybe 5 research people in labs in the entire world are working on it. Um, so very far away from commercialization. But one avenue is neuromorphic computing, where the AI paradigm matches much more closely to biological brains. Um, we talk about
Mm,
artificial neural networks is what are currently used, but the paradigm has very it only has a mathematical um, correspondence to biological brains. There's a lot that the biological brain does that our current artificial intelligence does not even approach doing. And i- 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 if I was to just talk a little about neuromorphic computing, the human any biological brain is just massively more parallel. Even though we have these GPUs, which have been able to do all these things in parallel, um, biological brain is even more massively parallel. Um, and and part of the reason is because we have a 3D structure, right? And axons are able to maneuver all over the place, and it's a very complicated 3D structure in the human brain. Whereas chips, the way we could only manufacture compute elements, which are computer chips, it's essentially a 2D structure. So there's a limit to how much parallelization we can actually have. Um, at any rate, it's very much an open research project, um, and it is just a little bit of personal thing here. 25 years ago, when I had time and I started digging into the research of AI, neuromorphic computing is the one I was interested in. And I gotta say, I kind of missed the whole GPU-led AI that we use today, as it was developing through the 2012, 2015, 2016, because I wasn't really paying attention to it until until ChatGPT came out, and it was like, "Holy shit, I
Yeah.
maybe I should pay attention to this."
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, I guess speaking paying of attention, um, that's what the transformers are all about. In that it seems like the AI is
Yes.
learning, but it's just has a very short-term memory that it knows to kind of reference that, but you're not changing the underlying model. It's just that it remembers enough about the conversation that you're having. Just so like when you're doing full self-driving, it's kind of aware of, of the situation that's going on, and probably knows a little bit of what happened in the past, so it can help predict the future. But it doesn't know a whole lot, and then it gets wiped and then doesn't really remember anything, but the underlying driving model does not change. And so this is the problem with continuous learning, is that even if you had a transformer, it might kind of remember something there, but it doesn't remember it doesn't become a permanent part of the model without getting uploaded, and then them having to go to this very complicated situation of updating it and then getting it out to the whole fleet. So ideally, it'd be nice if continuous learning actually happened kind of instantaneously at that time, as well as like reasoning. As you were saying, Phil, a lot of times um, we would like it to solve the problem. And then once it realizes how it solved the problem, then remember that going future in the future. It shouldn't be a teleoperator comes in and then solves a problem. And now, oh, that's the problem solution we uploaded. We would like it to be more like what's happening in RL where it explores and based on that exploration, it's able to improve what's going on, get that, and now retain that. And that you're right. It's we need a fundamental change in the architecture. Transformers are not going to be enough. Transformers are kind of a crutch for now.
Yeah, yeah, they're the best we can do. It
True.
all comes down to the AI hardware at the end of the day. AI,
Mhm.
'cause I was following it since the 1980s. It's gone through winters, AI winters and all this kind of stuff. And the thing that finally saved AI, from, yet more disappointments was the hardware. We finally got GPUs, in 2012, more or less, and by the way, Jensen is an absolute genius on the level of Elon, in my opinion, because he recognized early that his GPUs, which gamers, loved, um, would be useful for AI. And he created a division, an AI division, way back then. So, kudos to Jensen for figuring that out for NVIDIA. Um, so yeah, until we can come up with better hardware, it's gonna be an issue with continuous learning. Now, maybe there's workarounds, right? There might be workarounds. Maybe our current hardware trajectory will get so performant you can kind of work your way around it. It won't be as the same kind of AI that our biological brains do, but maybe it'll be good enough, right? So, so we'll have to see. We'll have to see.
Yeah, and again, we don't know what the hardware is gonna look like until we can come up with that architecture. So once they figure out what the software architecture is supposed to look like, only then can you make sure that the hardware max. And again, it comes down to like what Sunday and others are doing is realizing they need to own the whole stack. They need to build the hardware along with the software to really be able to get the performance they're looking for.
So there's another question you got on the screen here, which is, what's the path of speeding up the handling? Yeah, why Memo is slow? How can you make it go faster? And I think, well, we don't know. We don't know whether or not, that's a development build kind of thing, and maybe Sunday has got, they already have in their mind that they can double or triple just based on efficiency gains in their software stack. So that's one thing. But the other one is just, every year the chips get faster and more efficient. So it'll ha it'll be fine, right? In 2 years, it won't be a problem, I don't think.
Yeah, yeah, and that's probably something we'll be able to find out from Sunday on Tuesday, to get an idea of exactly what it is from their blog. I get the impression they said because of the skill hand that they have already, the human slows down a little bit. So they are, I think like 60 to 80% of what they would normally be able to task, but they're not using an actual telerobotic arm or exoskeleton, but they are transforming that information. They're having to take it to now tell the robot to do that. But then they have to slow that down even a little bit more for some reason. Now, I know Figure was sort of the other way around, is that most of these bots are always slow because the teleoperation is slow. So they are literally mimicking the human. And so their speed is almost the same. And you can do a few things to speed it up, but you can't speed it up too much without your system suddenly becoming jerky and everything else. So you almost have to rely on that underlying data set. So that's kind of a performance cap there. I think Figure was able to do a little bit with their bot to squeeze 20 or 30% speed out of what the motion capture was of the human. But because the human motion capture was still slower than what it would be normally, it's not at 100% human level yet.
I suspect that's just data pipeline
Mhm.
limitation. They
It's
with
not the
more
actuators.
effort.
There's
Yeah.
more than enough headroom left over, but a lot of it comes down to getting smooth motions, and if they start getting it too fast, and it's like doing other weird jerky motion, they have to figure out how do we, compensate for that or figure out ways of smoothing that.
Yeah, I think it'll end up being a software with
Mhm.
more software and more
That's my feeling.
effort, more development effort on their part that
Yeah,
they can
yeah.
figure it.
Yeah, because if it's literally imitation learning and you show someone how to do a task and you show how to do it really slowly, and if they're faithfully imitating you, they'll do it just as slowly. But usually people learn to speed up on their own after a while because they say, "Well, the only reason you're doing something slow is maybe there's something in the task that requires time." It's like when you're cooking or something like that, you do have to do things at a certain speed. You just can't decide, "I wanna go faster or slower." But there's other processes that, yeah, you can probably pick the speed that you want. Mhm. Okay, so Phil, thank you very much for coming on the podcast. Hopefully, this is the first of many appearances. It's going to get, I think, really busy in 2026. Yes, that's the next year. I'm getting lost here. That we'll be having definitely weekly updates, if not almost daily updates, coming from everyone. So,
I don't know how I'm gonna keep up,
yeah,
honestly.
neither am I. That's why I'm relying on you.
Well, great. And this was a great conversation, Scott, and I really appreciate it. This is my first podcast, believe it or not. So there you go.
Wow. Wow, absolutely, and you chose us, so, yeah, it's an honor, Phil. Okay, great.
Likewise.
Okay.